Aloha and good afternoon. Governor Josh Green is giving an address on the Maui wildfires updates. Let's listen in.
Based on calls and emails they've received. And in many cases, they only have names of these individuals on a list and no other information. This is the number that initially was over 3,000 and then dropped to 385 last week, and now, I repeat, is at 66. The Maui Police Department continues to make daily progress on missing persons reports and encourages families to share information about any missing loved ones. Since August 16th, the American Red Cross, the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, and FEMA have relocated over 7,500 displaced survivors from shelters to a total of 29 hotels and hundreds of Airbnbs. 15,931 individuals have filed for FEMA relief. The accommodations I have described will continue to provide meals, casework services, financial recovery resources, and other disaster relief assistance until we're able to move to the next phase of our recovery. However, hotels can't be our long-term solution to housing in West Maui. We've entered into an agreement with the Red Cross to house our people for a minimum of 36 weeks. We're also pursuing relationships with large numbers of homeowners who have historically used their properties for short-term rentals to convert them into longer-term rentals to accommodate displaced residents. Residents can actually enter into much longer agreements to receive housing through FEMA. FEMA will continue to assist us with direct leases and rental assistance grants to ensure that people can stay housed for 18 months well into 2025. And these costs will be covered by federal assistance, state resources, and humanitarian aid. For those who would like to provide housing and be a part of this solution, I've worked with the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation, HHFDC, to launch what's called the Hawaii Fire Relief Housing Program, which identifies available units to those devastated by the Maui wildfire tragedy. If you'd like to get involved in this program to help our survivors, you can reach HHFDC through this email, hhfdcfirereliefhousing@hawaii.gov. We also intend to contract with 3 to 5 hotels locally to be able to lease their entire properties long-term for the recovery effort, which will serve as an additional housing safety net for us. Finally, a smaller number of transitional temporary housing units in the form of kauhale communities will be built on Maui to aid those not housed in long-term rentals or hotels. But housing alone won't be enough to get our people through this incredibly difficult time. Generosity from around the world has poured into Hawaii, to the American Red Cross, the Hawaii Community Foundation, and the Maui United Way. The tens of millions of dollars donated to these and other worthy organizations are providing life-sustaining support to supplement state and federal need. I've authorized $100 million from a special revenue source called Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF, to support what others donate, magnifying the power of everyone's generosity. Because Lahaina businesses have also been destroyed and many others across Maui County are struggling to survive, I've also authorized immediate relief to help prevent business bankruptcies. Working with House and Senate leaders and in partnership with Maui County, the Mayor, Hawaii Community Foundation, we'll make $25 million available immediately in the form of $10,000 and $20,000 bridge grants to help businesses all across Maui survive until the economy can recover. The Maui Economic Opportunity Team will help us distribute these grants. Now we turn to Lahaina Town and our road to recovery and healing. Many displaced survivors have asked when they can return to their homes and properties and businesses to survey the damage. In the coming weeks, we'll begin to schedule supervised visits for displaced people to return and view their property under safe conditions. I need to share this with you. The ash, we are told, is quite toxic, so we need to be careful. Once the EPA has completed its removal of hazardous materials from the affected areas, which is ongoing, this process will take 3 to 4 months, we can begin the removal of other debris. To be clear, people will get in soon, but the long-term debris removal is going to take a great deal of time. We're in a partnership right now with FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers in this effort. This is going to take the better part of a year to remove all of this debris and over $1 billion to complete. This will be supported by the federal government. We've engaged 25 cultural practitioners also to help us guide this effort and ensure that the Hawaii traditions we have and respect during this process are in place. We'll make every effort to use local workers also and local companies to complete this work. I'm incredibly proud of the entire West Maui community for their courage, their commitment, and everything they show as far as aloha goes and support for our survivors. And for their patience, I'm also grateful as this arduous process unfolds. We're grateful to all of the federal partners, including FEMA, who have worked so hard over the last 30 days to support our emergency response and deliver aid and assistance to survivors. We've received assurances of continued federal support and investment to help West Maui recover and rebuild, and we will support and care for the survivors of this disaster for as long as it takes. I especially want to thank President Biden for his unwavering support from the very beginning of this crisis. He has been a rock-solid partner throughout, and our entire response and recovery effort is thanks to him. I'd also like to thank Speaker McCarthy and the entire bipartisan congressional delegation for the attention and concern that they have shown the people of Maui. Working with these federal partners and others, I'll continue to make sure that Maui receives every resource available and that these resources get directly to the people who need it. As we recover, we will be faced by many extraordinary challenges, including finding ways to deliver support to survivors who have lost loved ones and homes, while protecting our people from predatory business practices. I repeat, many donors from around the world have sent generous support to our devastated communities. However, others have descended on Maui seeking an opportunity to profit. Some of these outsiders seek to take as much as 1/3 or more of the compensation that the survivors of this tragedy are due. This kind of opportunism and profiteering on the suffering of our people is not pono, so I'm taking action to prevent it. I've instructed my team to explore the possibility of forming a recovery fund for those that have been impacted. This is intended to eliminate the need for those who have been affected by the fire to go through years of costly and painful litigation, with eventual recovery uncertain. In the spirit of aloha, local attorneys who seek to represent Maui survivors will be humbly asked to support and represent survivors on a pro bono basis or at a greatly reduced rate, so survivors can receive more of the settlements they deserve. And I'm calling on our local legal and business leaders to support this effort. The people of Maui must have as much time as they need to heal and recover, and will begin to rebuild only when they are ready, according to the timeline they choose. Lahaina belongs to its people, and we're committed to rebuilding and restoring it the way they want it. I want to emphasize this again. The land in Lahaina is reserved for its people as they return and rebuild, and I instructed the Attorney General to impose enhanced criminal penalties, including up to a year in prison, on anyone who tries to take advantage of survivors by an unsolicited acquisition of property in affected areas on Maui. I've also ordered a full investigation of the cause of the fire and the emergency response. We'll get answers to exactly what happened there, and there will be full accountability and transparency to the public. Now, regarding travel to Hawaii. Outside of West Maui, all other areas of Maui and the rest of Hawaii are safe and now open to visitors outside of West Maui. And we invite everyone to travel to our state today, which will support the local economy and help speed the recovery of those who have already suffered so much. Many have asked when it will be the right time to reopen West Maui to visitors. There's no easy answer to this question, but I can say this, that if we support Maui's economy and keep our people employed, they'll heal faster and continue to be able to afford to live on Maui. Beginning October 8th, 1 month from today, all travel restrictions will end, and West Maui will be open to visitors again, so people from Hawaii and around the world can resume travel to this special place and help it begin to recover economically. This difficult decision is meant to bring hope for recovery to the families and businesses on Maui that have been so deeply affected in every way by the disaster. We also, as a part of the most recently issued emergency proclamation, have lifted the suspension on the water code. I wanted to share that with the environmental community. To help support the people of Maui, I remind everyone to please give to the American Red Cross or the Hawaii Community Foundation's Maui Strong Fund, both of which will make sure that the resources get to those in need. Thank you again for supporting the survivors of this tragedy as they mourn, grieve, and begin to recover. I will continue to keep you updated on our aid and relief efforts as we move forward, both in daily updates and in more comprehensive monthly assessments for our efforts. It's going to be a long process for us to rebuild and heal, and we're grateful for the love and support coming to Maui from around the country and around the world. Please keep Maui in your hearts, your prayers, as we start our long road to recovery. Mahalo.
That is Governor Josh Green giving an update on the relief efforts there on the Maui wildfire disaster. He will be having a question and answer portion with the media. Our Daryl Huff is there, so we'll bring that to you on later editions of Hawaii News Now. But just to wrap up what the governor said, some of the highlights. He says the FBI has reported that 66 people are potentially still unaccounted for based on calls and emails they have received. So he's saying that 66 is now the number that they're keeping an eye on. He said more than 7,500 displaced survivors have been moved from shelters to a total of 29 hotels and hundreds of Airbnbs. He said the state has entered into an agreement with the Red Cross to house survivors for at least 36 weeks. Residents say he then says residents can enter into agreements to receive housing through FEMA after that. The governor said close to 16,000 individuals have filed for FEMA relief. And turning to the cleanup in Lahaina, the governor says in the coming weeks they will begin to schedule supervised visits for residents to return and view their properties. He said the removal of hazardous materials from the affected areas will take 3 to 4 months. Then they can begin removing the debris that remains. He said the effort will take the better part of a year and cost more than $1 billion. And he wrapped up his address with talking about the economy. He says on October 8th, all travel restrictions will end and West Maui will once again be open to visitors.
So a lot of new information there, but we want to turn now to our Casey Lund, who is standing by. There is a paddle out ceremony happening there. Hopefully you can hear us. Casey, what's going on there?
I can. Hey, yeah, Dylan, I can hear you. We wanted to start with some of the action, and I'll get you right back to that if we can. We've got a helicopter that is circling around the paddle out here. I wanted to get you right to the action as quickly as we could because you came to me at the right time. And you see that helicopter circling this very large paddle out. We're here at Ukumehame Bay Beach Park, and this is a special moment that we're glad that we can share with people. If I had to estimate some of the folks aboard the Tiralani 4 that I'm a part of, I'm on that vessel here and grateful for that opportunity to be so close. We've been guessing there's probably 1,000 or more people in the water, and you include some of the people that are on their boats here. This is a day of healing, a month after a tragic event for this community, of course, one that so many people are still trying to wrap their minds around and not really able to. So moments like this of community and coming together are incredibly important, and you get chicken skin just watching this, seeing the people splash the water. This is the first of 2 helicopter flights. This one is going to drop a few rose petals there, some flowers, and just look at that, a really special moment for so many people in West Maui. Whether or not you had lost a home or a loved one, basically everyone on this side of the island knows somebody that was affected by those devastating, deadly wildfires on August 8th. There was another paddle out at 8 o'clock this morning. That one was at Kihei, a little smaller scale, but still a few hundred people in the water. Again, enjoying some community, trying to come together in such a difficult time, especially when you consider for 4 months these people have been asking for answers to questions that we just haven't received yet. We weren't listening in on the governor's speech, but hopefully we got a little bit more information as we were setting up here. We heard the number of missing drop down. There was some relief on this boat when I was able to share that with the people out here. That is good news, but still a lot of questions that people want answers to. But again, I want to just take this moment to say how grateful we are to be able to have a news camera here and bring this to the rest of the state and the country that may be watching online from far away, to know that their community is together. They're enjoying each other's company and trying to begin a very long and difficult healing process here in West Maui. Rose petals in the water, beautiful local music. It's a really gorgeous day after a really terrible month, guys.
Yeah, Casey, thank you so much for this report. I want to ask you a few questions there. Clearly, this paddle out is emotional, but it looks like people, as you mentioned, are breathing a sigh of relief. You've been there on the ground for quite some time now. How has the mood shifted from residents you've been speaking to, from sadness, anger? Are they starting to breathe a sigh of relief? What's it like?
I would say that, in the first couple of weeks after this, so many people were still in shock, really not able to process their emotions, right? And then there was the really stark realization that we're nowhere near through this crisis, that many people are still dealing with serious issues, finding any kind of relief for their mortgage payments, and then on top of that, finding the place that they can afford to pay rent. And so that sense of dread every day, having to get up, find Wi-Fi, fill out paperwork, whether it be through FEMA or HUD, that's still so much a knot in people's stomach. But there are moments like this, there are stories here happening in Maui that give people a sense of hope, they give people a sense of relief, and put a smile on people's faces. And that's what we're seeing today. People are having a good time out here. And one of the most important things that I heard from a gentleman that we were with at that 8 a.m. paddle out was this is also a moment to be grateful for all that we still have. Despite this unimaginable loss that so many people have suffered, this is a special place to live, and there's so many special people that live here.
Thank you so much, Casey. Thank you so much for sharing this moment. I mean, just watching it, it's beautiful. I have chicken skin. I love it. Thank you for bringing it to us.
All right. Well, that was nice to see that live paddle out there with that helicopter dousing the people there in flowers. We're going to have much more news on this coming up right after a short break.
According to the forecast model, we're going to see stronger winds start to pick up by tomorrow, and they will run firm all the way into the middle of next week. But by Wednesday, another interruption in the force expected, and this is the remnants of what used to be Hurricane Hova. It's going to start to cut into the trade winds sometime around Wednesday, and then we'll see those lighter winds probably in through next weekend. But for today, we'll get those light winds again. That means it's going to be humid out there. It's not going to be a lot of rain. It's going to be relatively dry. And then as those winds pick up speed tomorrow through Tuesday, there's a higher chance for a few more windward and Mauka showers overnight and early morning. Not a lot of rain out there when you add it all up. And then we'll see those winds lighten up again on Wednesday. Humidity levels will start to rise again. But all in all, some very quiet conditions considering we are now in the peak of hurricane season.
Thank you so much, Guy. We want to stick with Maui now and talk about news out of the Board of Education. Members of the BOE held a meeting to get more clarity on the number of Lahaina students who still have not yet been accounted for since the fires. School Superintendent Keith Hayashi said as of last week, there were about 1,200 Lahaina students who were not yet re-enrolled at another campus. There were different reasons cited, including how many families have not decided where to send their child to school. Of the 1,200 not enrolled, DOE officials have been able to contact more than 600 families.
Of those, department staff have personally spoken with 637 families. For another 466, phone messages have been left and will continue to attempt to reach them. There are 45 students that the department still needs to make contact with, and we are actively working to reach each family.
Meanwhile, free school bus service started yesterday for Lahaina students to get to class in Central and South Maui. Families have to enroll their students at Wailuku Elementary or Kamali'i Elementary and Lokelani Intermediate to get bus service. Pickup and drop-off locations are at Kapalua Airport and Whalers Village. And starting next week, Lahaina Luna High School will begin temporary operations out of Kulani Hako'i High, that's located in Kihei. Families of students needing assistance should call the DOE hotline at 808-727-6880 or text the word support to 808-736-1427. We want to take you back now to the Hawaii State Capitol, where Governor Josh Green is answering questions from reporters in a Q&A. Let's go ahead and listen.
Then down to about 1,200, and then 800 for a couple days. Meanwhile, more names are coming in. Then they finally, as things settled down after 3 weeks, saw the number drop very significantly because they went through large numbers of names. It got down to 385, as you know, last week. Within 2 days after that, it dropped another 60. And now here on the one month date of the fire anniversary, it is at 66. A couple things to also explain so people understand very well. Of the 115 individuals that have passed away, that we are able to know that there's 115 at least, there's still more than 50 that we haven't been able to determine who they are. That number is going to overlap very significantly with the 66. And I want to be clear, I'm trying to give extra information so people understand more thoroughly why there are additional numbers. The current number that the Maui Police Department is actively investigating, where they have a full report, name, first name, last name, maybe the address of that person so that that can be lined up as the search goes, because our search and rescue team was able to determine in one block there was a person. That number is 41. So the FBI is at 66 and they're continuing every day to lower their number, and the full number of reports that the Maui Police Department has is 41. So we're starting to see that the universe of 115 fatalities is about where we are, and there may be some additional fatalities as we go through the next month. The Maui Police Department is also going to give more information. At the 2-month mark, the only investigations they'll be able to even consider are for people who have filed police reports with them with extra information. But we, of course, are not rushing a soul because this is such a heartbreaking situation. Yes.
I'm following up reporting I did on food aid for Vox News.
Yes.
And the Salvation Army is still listing on its website that it partnered with a group called Chef Louis, which you know.
Yes.
To deliver food aid in the days immediate aftermath of the fire.
Yes.
That organization obviously is receiving federal and state funds. My question to you is, given that those chefs and those restaurateurs and those suppliers were providing the Salvation Army with that food that they were distributing at their own costs, is the state doing anything to pick up the slack and pay those bills for those people? Many of those restaurants are facing furloughs, closures right now because they paid out of pocket to give food to an organization that was being financed to do.
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned that. So I went and met with them. They're extraordinary people. We do intend to give them grants to pay for a lot of their overhead and the costs that they've put in. I can talk more broadly about the monies that we're beginning to make available, but the Chef Hui and the food that they're going to need to provide going forward, we intend to do contracts with them because right now, as you know, most people are in hotels. which makes it a little bit easier for people to set up meal delivery services, and they've been incredible. But soon, thousands of people are going to be in Airbnbs all across Maui, and they're going to have to come to central places. The chef hui is going to be very important. So we've committed ourselves to getting them grants. A couple of piles of money that are going to be available, okay? First of all, we have a large contract with the Red Cross, okay? So that helps a lot for housing and, of course, some of the wraparound food services and social services. In addition to that, I've authorized $100 million of TANF funding. That's temporary assistance for needy families. That's going to look something like 3,000 or 4,000 families are going to share in that $100 million. In addition to that, we've authorized a cap for our budget and finance people to go up to $100 million of overall expenditures. I put $30 million in there immediately. They're going to be putting another $35 million in the near future. Those are the kind of monies that can go to grants. And then there is the small business loans, some of which will be for restaurants. So there's a lot of different things going on, but they should have grants directly for their costs.
Respectfully, I'm hearing from Chef Hui restaurateurs that they're being declined.
And once again, you are listening live to Governor Josh Green holding a Q&A with reporters. Our time here on This Is Now is winding down, but we are going to continue this live stream on your HNN digital platforms. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great afternoon.
Aloha.
Compensate them for what they've done. One idea that I have proposed is that because they are located at the community college there, that we can, because they're there, we can bank that money right through the community college system. Might be easier to do that for them, but they deserve to be reimbursed.
In terms of rental assistance, what's being done to help undocumented people or those who don't qualify for FEMA aid?
Very good question. Okay, so let's look at the universe of people who are struggling and suffering right now. So Lahaina was 12,000 plus people. Many people were longtime residents, citizens of Hawaii. There are certainly individuals that either fall into other categories, COFA individuals, compact free states, or individuals that were undocumented. There are some dreamers in the mix. Those people will also get housing, same as other people, but that will go directly through the Red Cross. They've assured us that they can compensate Airbnbs and they can do what FEMA can do for individuals that are longtime citizens of Hawaii, of the United States, COFA migrants, and others that are undocumented will get the monies through that source. And the state has some capacity too. We can choose to do this. The reason it's important that we do as much as we can through FEMA is because we get reimbursed for it. And I have been working very closely with FEMA and the president to make sure that Hawaii gets almost all of the dollars that are spent to be reimbursed. Right now, it is highly likely that we will move from what normally is like a 75-25 split, we will move to a 90-10 split. That is almost guaranteed in the near future. They'll be sharing that with everyone. Over time, we hope to go to 100% with the help of our congressional delegation. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but that's a very important question. And then there's a third category, and that's individuals who are homeless. Those individuals fall into neither category, and so we will be starting Kauhale so that people can go into villages that we've kind of experienced here on Oahu before. So lots of different solutions that have to be done. And I will also say this, the TANF program, if there's one person in the family that's a citizen, they're going to qualify. And that will be a significant amount of money. For example, it could be as much as $30,000 for a large family to help them get through any number of things. Housing, food, clothing, education, all these things.
Governor, in the
Sorry.
I'm interested in accountability here and this compensation fund that you're envisioning to avoid litigation. The state is a party to litigation. It's a defendant in litigation.
Yes.
So is the county, so is HECO, all these folks are you seeing a system that somehow avoids litigation And how do you have a system like that? First of all, how does it work? Where's all the money coming from?
Yes.
And two is, how do you ensure that ultimately people are held accountable? Because that's what the process of litigation is about. Is this an effort to avoid accountability for some of the parties by avoiding the litigation?
No, for several reasons. Okay, so let me break this down. A Lahaina fund, okay, is what it will be described as. Money's come together a lot of times during disasters, natural disasters, terrorist attacks like 9/11 is an example. I've been in consultation with Mr. Feinberg, who is Ken Feinberg, who set the fund up for 9/11. He's advising us pro bono. The reason to have a fund is not to avoid any responsibility. In fact, I want us to have total accountability and total responsibility. It's why the Attorney General is doing whatever she has to do to get every answer and give you guys regular updates, okay? There are going to be lawsuits anyway, no matter what, because not everyone's going to opt in to a fund like this, which means maybe a half or 2/3 would opt into a fund. This is how it would work. If it's ultimately something that we pursue, and I'm looking very hard at this, you set up funds. I would assume that every partner to any lawsuit would consider being a part of it. Those monies go into one fund, one account, and then whoever wants to sign up for it would be eligible for, could be millions of dollars. If they decide to be a part of that, then they will not have to go the route of lawsuits. They'll choose, and they will be able to get their money 6 months or 9 months or something like that, as opposed to, and this has historically been true, many years. So it's just like that. Now, I'm going to put the whole report out anyway about what went right, what went wrong, what we should have done years ago to prevent fire risk, what we can do years from now. But this gives people an opportunity. Usually it's millions of dollars per individual, and they may want that. They may want that. But I would never tell someone not to pursue litigation if that's the road that's better for them. I will say this. The reason the fund may very well be good is because people can get, in that circumstance, if we do this right, a settlement right away, and they won't have to pay 35% of whatever settlement they get to an attorney in Los Angeles or New York or Chicago, okay? They will get all of their money for themselves. I'm still going to report total responsibility and accountability anyway. So people will have to make that choice, and it's an okay choice, whatever they go for. But I personally would rather see all of the resources when there are settlements go to the people that lost everything.
Who does that, for example, does HECO pay into this? The county, the state, who pays into that fund?
Yes, it would be everyone. It would be my guess. I would expect that HECO would want to participate. I would suspect anyone who's been party to any of these suits would be open to it. Now, these are very high-level legal conversations that are even going on now to see where people are. I think there is responsibility that has to be met for those who have lost loved ones and who have lost their properties and who have lost their businesses. It is very difficult to determine who is ultimately responsible, and that's why funds like this can be helpful. I also think that people are going to want to move forward with their lives. And I know that it's been sometimes more than a decade, like for 9/11, where people didn't get the ultimate decision, because then there's a lawsuit, then there's an appeal, then there's another appeal. They have to rely on these power broking attorneys to cover extensive costs, and then they lose most of their money. So I don't think that's the best way to go, but I just want to make options available to people.
I'll let others go.
Dan, Sabrina, Audrey, and Chad, kind of in this strip.
Okay.
Yep.
Governor, you twice, you've mentioned this before, but in your address, you mentioned 2 types of predatory practices.
Yes.
What are you seeing in terms of numbers, both unsolicited offers to buy land and, what you imply was predatory lawyers coming in?
Okay.
What are you seeing in terms of reports, like raw numbers, what's been verified?
We know dozens of attorneys have come to the state and solicited people as early as on the first day after the fire. The Attorney General has taken umbrage with that and is very upset, and she's filing legal complaints against people who were not licensed to practice in Hawaii. Those are the worst vultures, and they need to fly back to the mainland. Now, other people, we respect our lawyers here who know the people of Hawaii, who have the spirit of aloha for them, that's a different story altogether. Now, we have heard a lot of different vignettes about people being contacted to quickly sell their property. Again, people are allowed to sell their property. They own it if they ask someone else, hey, would you like to buy my property? But we don't want people who are grieving to be approached and asked to sell their property for $50,000 or $100,000 when it might be worth $1 million, just because they're so desperate to handle a mortgage payment or so desperate to pay for a funeral. That's why it's predatory. I think there are going to definitely be prosecutions against some attorneys who have behaved in this way. And I will also point to Judge Cahill, who I want to commend, who immediately stepped in and cautioned attorneys from the mainland that they better follow our rules and better treat our people in a proper way, or else they cannot expect to be given, I think it's, forgive me for not using the right legal term, given privileges to practice law in our state. It is not a small number. Basically, a lot of people view these kind of crises as the lottery, and that is the very worst way to approach it. I do have my Attorney General here if we wanted to get some more specifics about, the question was the number of cases and examples that we've had where attorneys have come to the state of Hawaii and taken advantage perhaps, or tried to take advantage, or people have solicited sales of properties. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Ann's been doing a great job. You can only imagine this took the job of the Attorney General, which was already robust because we were dealing with housing and homelessness, and now we have an entire other universe of challenges.
Unfortunately, I can't give a great answer because, of course, most of you have heard us say that we have ongoing investigations, and I'm not going to talk about the details, but I will tell you that we have received, every day we receive a number of complaints. I get them from just regular people. I get them from other attorneys who are licensed in the state of Hawaii. We give those to our investigators, and so we have several active investigations going on.
And could you describe the unsolicited offers to purchase land? How many, what caseload are you getting on that?
I won't go into what the caseload number is, but I don't know if you've been over there. Did you start getting hit with robocalls almost as soon as you landed in Maui? So there's a lot of robocalls. Is probably the most common way that people are trying to get in touch.
Thanks.
Folks, since AG is up, let's go ahead and forget the order. If anybody has an AG-related question, mainly around investigation, let's do that now.
Mine isn't AG-related, so.
Go for it.
Oh, okay. My question, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but my publication deals with global tourism, and our readers are not necessarily in Hawaii. There's still a lot of...
Oh, it's not an AG question?
No, it's not.
Oh,
no.
wait, hold on, just pause real quick. Anybody have an AG-related question?
I do. I mean, if I could. It's a long... And how can you assure the public that your investigation is going to be completely impartial, given that now the state is a defendant in some of these lawsuits, and even though you've hired or made arrangements with this international fire investigations kind of organization, some of the questions are more political policy kind of questions. I mean, is it right for the Attorney General in this situation to be the one overseeing these investigations?
Yes, I am the right person to do the investigation for a couple of reasons. One is that is my constitutional and statutory obligation. A second is I believe it is good governance that when we have a critical incident like this, that we are all obligated to look at the facts, to analyze what happened, what worked, what didn't work, and make sure that we put guardrails in place for the future so it doesn't happen again. On the politics side of things, I am not political. The governor will tell you this.
Don't laugh.
Don't laugh.
She is a stubborn AG.
When it comes to this type of thing, the governor and I have had some good discussions about the separation of what my powers are and what his are as the elected official.
So just to be specific, if you wanted to talk, if your investigators wanted to talk to a state official who was in the middle of, say, the emergency moment, and that person says, I don't want to talk to you, would you actually subpoena a state employee to force them to talk to the investigators?
Well, I am hoping that all state and county employees recognize it's our obligation to assess what we did and what we didn't do, and that they will voluntarily participate in this. I do have subpoena power.
And you'd use it?
Yes.
In fact, that was one of the points that the AG made to me, which was she has the subpoena power. So to give this over to another entity who didn't have that power, they would be limited in what they could do. So look, there are going to be a lot of investigations, by the way, not just the Attorney General's investigation. I would point out that the Congress is going to weigh in and look at what could or couldn't have been done better. We hosted them already twice, and we do anticipate hearings. In fact, I think some of our individuals have already been asked to go to Washington, which would include, I believe, our Director of Energy and our PUC personnel. So we're going to participate in every way. My view of the crisis is it is a tragedy beyond belief, and we better get to the answer so that we don't have another.
I think we have some follow-up here, Gov. Go ahead.
I think, Robert Wong with KITV4. I think it's related to your bailiwick here, but one of the things that we're talking about earlier is some of the businesses that right now, they really enjoyed, the ones I talked to, enjoyed your meeting on Wednesday. They felt like things are going the right direction. Yes. But they also felt like they're still kind of stuck in between right now, where they are still on the hook for rent for some of their buildings that are now gone. Yeah. There's no moratorium for businesses, but they're the same way that you're able to do that residentially. Is that something that's within the state powers to be able to create a moratorium for those business owners?
I would say that the best person to answer that question would be the Consumer Protection Advocate, Mana Moriarty. Because I don't have a very clear yes or no, so I don't want to speculate on that, and I'll let him take that call.
Yeah.
That's being addressed?
It's being addressed. We have broached the subject, and also the reason to get a $10,000 or $20,000 grant, not a loan, is to give them a breather for these 30 days. Now, individuals whose businesses were in Lahaina are looking at multiple years before they can recover, but other businesses that are just closed because they're in Kihei or they're up country. As you know, I just announced that we're going to be reopening on October 8th for travel to the entirety of Maui, and the rest of Hawaii, of course, is open. So we're expecting to see people start coming back, which is hopefully going to be a bridge for them. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be a slowed amount of economic activity on Maui for some time. We hope, like in past pandemics or other crises, that landowners will be generous and sometimes defer either payments on rent or even mortgage payments. There are some provisions that we can get where people can put payments at the back end of their mortgage. Usually it's a 3-month period. There are a lot of things in the federal government that can allow that. So there are other available ways for people to get a little bit of temporary relief. We would love to have a moratorium on more of those rents, but keep in mind, if I do a moratorium on some business owner's rent, I'm putting it then on the property owner, and the property owner probably has a mortgage. So I'm not positive I'm helping anybody directly.
Right, and that's where, I mean, obviously we're 30 days out. Every single one of these businesses in that situation has had to have at least one rent payment.
Yeah.
And if we're talking October 8th, that's another month. So I mean, this is a pretty critical time for that standpoint.
That's why we want next week, we want checks to start going out. And we'll do what we can. There's a lot of different resources that are going to go, not just to businesses, but to people. Most of the resources are going to go to people that were living in Lahaina, let's be honest. But some of these other programs can apply. And as you know, the SBA, the Small Business Administration, can provide a lot of pretty significant loans, but I'm not really so sure people want more loans at this point. Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah. Following up on Daryl's question. Mm-hmm. Are you able to characterize what level of cooperation you're getting from various entities you want to explore in terms of your investigation? Or are people generally being, quote unquote, lawyer, not saying,
Nobody has lawyered up. Right now, we're just at the collecting some document stages. Interviews with state and county employees will begin sometime in the next week. We will set a period of time where folks who were in the fire, who were impacted by the fire, if they want to be interviewed, we will provide them that opportunity as well. In order to do that well, we're in the process of making sure that we have the right interpreters present so that everybody has an opportunity to share what their experience was.
Does that include HECO in terms of not ordering that?
I hadn't actually planned to focus on HECO at this point because, pardon me, pardon me, our focus is really what did state and county officials do and what actions did we take during that period.
Thank you.
Sorry. Okay.
The nervous summit with each of you.
That's all right.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry, my questions are more really in the tourism related field because our readers are globally and in tourism.
You bet.
Now, there's still a lot of confusion, I can tell you, in the world in regards to what the situation is here in Hawaii. And I get these phone calls myself every single day from people, what happened to your tourism industry? Is it dead?
Yes.
People don't understand because in the beginning, the remarks were made, it's closed, everything was closed. So I also haven't heard anything from HTA, what HTA is doing, except their press releases. There hasn't been anyone at a press conference. And now you're reopening in Maui. At the same time, messages are going out that you're using hotels to facilitate local needs, what is understandable. Then you have the large businesses like the Marriott.
I'm going to have to get you to the question. What's the question?
The question is, what exactly the coordination is between the governor's office, HTA, and the stakeholders?
Yes.
Specifically the large stakeholders and the medium and small sized businesses so they can get back on track.
Sure, thank you. So, the HTA team is underneath my DBED director, who is intimately involved with everything here, Jimmy Tokioka. Today is meant to be a day of clarity. The fire occurred on August 8th. Today, September 8th, a month later, and people can travel, as they know, as of this moment, anywhere throughout Hawaii and anywhere through Maui, except for West Maui, as of this moment. On a month from today, 10/8, there will be no travel restrictions whatsoever. Also, the capacity that the hotels have to provide for our displaced victims, the displaced families, that period ends more or less right before October 1st. So there'll be far fewer people in hotels. We will concentrate our individuals that stay in hotels into just 2 or 3 hotels, and all the other hotels will be able to function as normal. I will say this, there may be slightly fewer rooms because some of the hotels are putting up their own workers. That's an important thing that they've been doing. It provides comfort. It also provides a sense of family and community. But all the other hotels will be able to open. They are eager to put their people back to work. I've met with virtually all of them. So as of a month from today, people should know there are no restrictions whatsoever. People can come to Maui, any part of Maui with the exception of Lahaina, which of course has had a devastating fire.
Can I make one more remark to take home and a question? We've been approached by organization, not October News, in one of our members, what is the New York International Travel Show, one of the largest in the United States. They wanted to give free exhibitor space to medium, small-sized businesses, what our organization does. I've tried my very best to communicate this to the Hotel Association, to HTA, and and there's been there hasn't been a return phone call. So I feel, how would a regular citizen, an organization like ours, what is based in Hawaii, what works globally, communicate with an HTA that doesn't know how to answer the phone?
Guys, I'm going to pause you there, and that'll be the end of this. I'm not going to allow my people who have just gone through a catastrophic fire and trying to help people be, even for 1 second, suggested that they're not tending to your needs. They're tending to the needs of the people in Lahaina.
Exactly.
I will say this, they can ask me. My office is going to be very open. We'll do a lot of media, a lot of television programs to make sure people know that 2 months to the day after the fire, which will be October 8th, people can come in any capacity they would want to help our people heal. And the HTA will put, of course, all of these things I'm talking about today on their website. So it should become quite clear. One of the lessons we learned with COVID and this was a lesson that was learned the hard way, is we weren't clear. We weren't clear with a clear date of when we're going to open so people could be ready. So I'm trying to give a clear date. I know it's going to be bumpy, but people will help us heal if they come to Maui, whether it's Kaanapali, Kapalua, Kihei, upcountry, they will help heal. And I would also hope that a lot of our own people do staycations, get Kamaina rates, and help people during October and November. It's going to be very good. But we will welcome New Yorkers and we'll welcome people from Europe. Just they have to be sensitive because it's still going to be very raw for a lot of our people, though they do, for the most part, really want travelers to come back and help pay the bills.
Sabrina, you're up next. Folks, I see hands, but I'm going to let this crew go. Nobody asked the question yet.
Thank you. So I was just wondering, I know that the Office of Wellness and Resiliency has been working closely and working on trauma-informed cases.
Yes.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the work that they're doing with survivors, as well as if they're going to stand up or do anything during these supervised visits that are coming up?
They will, yes. So for those who don't know, the Office of Wellness and Resiliency is a group that was embedded in the governor's office. They have a team of like 8 or more people they've been adding to help with trauma-informed care. They've been kind of the hub for us to bring psychologists from the community, psychiatrists from the community, set up free clinics, set up clinics in the hotels, and then go out into the field. And also soon, we're going to have additional hubs with the Department of Health, and actually we're getting SAMHSA grants, those are grants from the federal government, to bring extra resources and money here to provide direct care. We may also contract with people to do telepsychiatry also. As of earlier this month, we had 150 or more behavioral health experts in the field. It is very rough because people are going to go through grieving in different stages. Some people still are holding out hope that their loved one may be found. So they haven't even begun to go through the period beyond denial. And so they're going to go through the patterns of rage and then ultimately deep sadness, and then they will come to accept what's happened. But that loss is going to be there. There's going to be a lot of depression, and we're trying to be careful. There's also primary care providers. One of my doctor friends was there doing what we call guerrilla medicine, which is going directly to beaches and to parks. That was Dr. Zunin the other day, and going and delivering direct care and a lot of mental health care services. We're also filling people's medications up. One of the emergency proclamations allowed us to expand the ability to do prescriptions from afar, give extensions on prescriptions, and give people the ability to use their licenses, I think, from farther away and practice here in Hawaii for a time. We did a lot of that during COVID. The Office of Trauma-Informed Care, though, is going to be a big part of the future because we're trying to embed them in all departments because a lot of people have neglected that part of our jobs.
Sabrina, any follow-up? Good. Audrey.
Governor, when do you plan to have the Lahaina Fund established and accepting claims?
Thank you. That's a good question. In the coming 2 to 3 weeks, I hope to have formal announcements about how this unfolds. We are racing against the clock because a lot of individual attorneys from far and abroad are descending on Hawaii and signing people up. What I would say is this. There's going to be more than enough time for people to choose whether or not they need to pursue litigation. If they decide to go that route, caution their attorneys that they may still participate in a survivors fund or a victims fund because I don't want them to give away a substantial part of their ultimate settlement because some attorney has it in a clause that they can't, go it themselves. Also, our local attorneys, as I said a moment ago, are being encouraged to provide pro bono support. We've approached the Bar Association. They've been very generous. So there are local attorneys already, I understand, reaching out and saying that they're available. So we're hopeful in the next 2 to 3 weeks this happens. A lot of things are happening at once, I've got to say, because people are filing lawsuits as we speak. And we're now coming, thank you, to a turning point. Soon we will know the full universe of how many people we've lost. And that will determine how much resources I can possibly find from other parties to help support this fund.
Just one question on that. Why does it matter how many people we've lost? How many people have died? But how much support
because that will determine, of course, how many lawsuits and how many people we have to try to sustain and their families going forward. And that will also determine how much in the way of resource we'll ultimately need. Usually, we're going to do all that we can to help people through their tough times. Money is never going to do enough for someone who's lost a loved one. It may do a lot for someone who's lost a property. It may do a lot for someone who's lost a business. But for people who have lost loved ones, they will obviously be seeking some form of financial settlement. And I think that we owe it to them to do our best to make it the most robust settlement that we can to help them to move on.
Good, Audrey? 1 second, Chuck?
Thank you for comment. Alan, are you good to do a follow?
Oh, I just have a quick housing question.
I'm not sure if Chad does the follow-up. So what are you
Okay.
doing?
Who had a housing question? Oh, go for it.
I
Sorry.
was wondering if you could share a couple more details on the temporary transitional housing you mentioned.
Yeah.
Where we need, how many units, and when.
So there's just so we don't, I don't want to confuse two things. There's two forms of housing that we're going to be pursuing, okay? Really even three. There's going to be the hotels and Airbnbs, right? For anybody that we can get into them, and that will be most of the population. The Kauhale we build, right now there were 165 individuals that were homeless in the region before the fire, and we've been taking care of everybody. Those individuals qualify for almost no programs, unfortunately. They didn't have housing, they didn't have a rental. So for them, we're going to stand up some Kauhale, okay? That's a universe of up to 165 people. Now there's another amount of housing that we have to begin to prepare for, and that's temporary housing that's much more substantial, that people may want to live in very long term. I'm speaking with the folks at FEMA on Saturday to review the first options. There are pieces of land not in Lahaina, because we're not going to rebuild anything in Lahaina, obviously, for a significant amount of time, not only because it's impossible, because the people of Lahaina have not yet told us what to build. But in and around Lahaina, there may be some need for temporary housing. We can do that. The way it works with FEMA is for those who don't have any insurance, for those who have costs that are unmet, they will provide a huge grant, usually it's after a year. We've gone through 4 months of meetings, and that will determine how much money we get and how much we can build. And I'm expecting that to be well over $1 billion of housing monies, but time will have to tell. So that's where we'll find certain parcels of land, and I would like to build those sooner rather than later, because after 18 months, it's not totally clear that we'll have ongoing resources for people. So as soon as I get the green light from FEMA, I'm going to start those conversations, and I would like to see us build 500, 1,000, 1,500 units of some sort if the community will have them. This has nothing to do with the Emergency Housing Proclamation or the Homeless Proclamation. It simply has to do with disaster recovery and what FEMA can offer.
I'll take one more and then I'm going to move to off topic.
So, you know me as climate and environmental reporter, and that's where I'm coming from with this question. I was a reporter, a journalist who covered Paradise and the Camp Fire, and I have been speaking with people in state government, DLNR, fire service, and for the last 18 months. And for me and for many of those people, what we're seeing today is ultimately a lack of imagination in the face of the realities of global warming, right? And your administration and you yourself are really pushing hard at addressing that. So I want to know, given precedents in Paradise and precedents in these sorts of disasters, climate field disasters,
yes,
all around the country and all around the world, how is Maui changing the state outlook about climate change response, resilience, retreat, whatever it might be?
Sure. No, that's a brilliant question. So I think as much as anything, the fire in Lahaina has shown that we're not coming to a time when there are going to be climate crises. We are in it. Football season's about to start. We're like in the second quarter, all right? It is happening right now. We're in the moment. And other cities and states and countries are going to experience this. We're even seeing it in Greece and Canada, and we've seen it in California. So first and foremost, when 9/11 happened, we ended up having a whole industry of security that developed. now that the Lahaina fire has happened and some of these other fires across the globe, I believe you're going to see a whole swath of policy that speaks to an era of climate change with superstorms. So the climate has dried us up very clearly. I mean, you need look no further than across the mountains of Maui to see how dry it is. And then with a superstorm, just one large hurricane and one fire, it swept through. That was the reality of Lahaina. We'll get to find out eventually how the fire started and what could have been done better, but that's the reality for everyone. So I think you're going to see a whole, just a legion of new ideas. It will be fire breaks. There's going to have to be reforestation and significantly improved plans to address anything from invasive grasses. You're going to see a lot more resource have to be put into DLNR. DLNR has been underfunded for decades. I think they receive like about 2% of the budget. It is just way too little. And you can see what happens. The tragedy is about people, but it's also now a tragedy that will affect, well, $5+ billion of houses, homes, businesses. It's affecting our budget. It's going to affect the next 2 years at least, significantly longer probably. And so people are going to learn a lesson that you can either deal with these challenges up front or you're going to pay later. And the worst part about paying later is you actually will have loss of life. So I think it's going to change everything. I think this year's legislative session is going to focus almost exclusively on new ways to deal with fires, moving fire lines or moving the wires underneath the ground. I think you're going to see major mitigating environmental interventions. I think you're probably going to see enhanced budgets for fire. I think you will probably see rural areas rural areas pre-positioning equipment, which is one thing that when you're in a rural place you don't have the luxury of doing. All of those things are going to become priorities. We're going to talk ultimately about better ways to use warning systems. We're going to talk about better ways to fund areas with high winds and high risk. So all of that's going to happen. I'm going to speak at the UN, I think a week from Sunday, and I'm going to give this speech, which is that in an era of climate change with enhanced storms, everyone is vulnerable. And I hope that that begins to resonate with people, because if we're going to have these sustainability goals, they should include this kind of response.
With due respect, I don't doubt you individually. I have faith in you, but I heard this in California after Paradise. I have spoken with a fire official in Maui who's been asking for funding for fire breaks in Lahaina since 1992. Yeah. In the rest of your state government, how are you going to light the fire under people to really get real on this?
Well, in this particular case, right, like I was explaining before, the crisis of 9/11, spawned trillions of dollars of spend in a new industry altogether. And in this crisis, it is just so visceral and so tragic, no legislator would avoid the issue. Everyone will focus on the issue. Now, hopefully, it won't just be 1 year worth. The problem we have, of course, is we are now in it. We are in an era of global, climate change. And what we do in Hawaii, we will be able to lead by example as far as mitigating efforts and our pain. When people see the pain that we have suffered, they're going to take us seriously. It's an unusual thing for a person like me to get to speak to a very broad audience, a broad international audience, but I will make this case. Smart legislatures and governments will make good investment in fire mitigation. Dumb ones will turn their backs to it, and they'll eventually experience a terrible disaster like this.
Governor, if I...
To Daryl, Chad, and then Manolo.
Can Chad and then Daryl?
Well, mine's actually kind of a follow what you just said, if you don't mind, Chad. Sorry. You just listed, I just was writing this list of the very things that you just said. All of these things were known, the risk was known before. And the failure to prevent, the failure to plan, the failure to manage even the laws that we had on the books, the failure to respond as the conditions changed that day, the failure to act quickly when the spark had struck. And I think that what we're hearing from viewers is that at this stage, a month out, are there things for which the public deserves an official apology from someone for all of these things being missed and leading to this thing?
Look, I can't speak to when people will apologize for this tragedy. I mean, I'm heartbroken, and I will tell you, and anyone out there, I am so sorry that you went through this. Of course, I'm just one person, okay? It's the world that has to apologize for what we have become, which is we have become a world where we turned our backs on global warming and we didn't prioritize things in advance. Now, let me give you an example, okay? This is important. We all decide when we're going to prioritize things in government. As you know, we just went through the pandemic, a virus, right? We didn't have masks ready for everybody before COVID came. We didn't have testing sites ready everywhere before it was clear that COVID could lock us all down. We didn't have vaccines already in place to deal with this coronavirus. And then when it became a huge threat, when it wreaked havoc, of course the world changed. That is in general, when people are assessing how much risk there is, how they decide where they're going to invest. Should we have invested more in fire prevention? Of course. Of course. But we had never had a fire of this consequence. What we have had, which took the lives of so many, what we have had is car accidents all the time, or overdoses. And those are the things that were more present in people's minds. So what I'm just trying to explain is, this is the way, unfortunately, large paradigm shifts occur. Usually it is jolted by some event.
I understand, but in some cultures, in some places, this idea that someone needs to say, I apologize for my particular failure. Do you think anyone in this case, and I'm not saying you weren't even here, but I mean, were there failures that people deserve apologies for on the ground, as opposed to just the general, people don't respond until something horrible happens?
No, I suspect that's going to happen. One of the challenges, and this is not an excuse, one of the challenges is, like I said earlier, the moment that the tragedy occurred, the next day, there were a legion of people coming to file lawsuits against every entity that exists, county, state, everyone. And everyone gets cautioned not to say much, because lawyers from your left and your right and above you and behind are going to use that. And I think that it is difficult in the moment to just apologize. I'll tell you, as a physician, for example, this was always one of the hardest things for me as a physician. When something didn't go great, you were cautioned not to apologize for it, because the moment you did, it was going to become part of the whole process, which is sad, because frankly, it's better between two people when they can come to some kind of closure. I think that closure is going to come. I don't know when it will happen between the individuals who are immediately in the moment, but it will come.
Thank you.
I'm going to move to Chad and then Manolo.
Thank you. Are we still on this topic?
Just move it on, because I'm going to have to pull in team in less than 10 minutes. You're welcome.
Governor, given the ongoing tremendous crisis in Lahaina, and the announcement yesterday of non-Rivera stepping down, are you reconsidering your emergency proclamation on housing and the work of the Build Beyond Barriers working group going forward? Is it maybe time to move that off the priority list given the overwhelming situation in Lahaina?
No, to my knowledge, we haven't solved the housing crisis at all yet. We have just as many people that are having a hard time finding a house all across the state and more in Lahaina. Now, but I don't want to be coy here. I'm sad that Nani has given me her letter of resignation and that she'll leave us in a month. I'm sad about the circumstances she left, because this is a very good person. We will probably take an opportunity to reflect on the emergency proclamation on housing and improve it. I will extend it. We'll improve it by putting more opportunities for input and participation, but it has to be done in a respectful way. Can't be combative and threatening like it occurred for Nani. I do want to make some points very clear, which we should have made from the start. It's meant to be affordable housing. It's meant to be housing along the line of the rail, for example, is one of the main areas. It's meant to be housing that was already approved, but just had gotten stuck. I think she made that point quite eloquently many times. This was never meant to create a conflict between us and an environmental group. It was never meant to suggest people couldn't have input. In fact, in many cases, people were going to have more input than the normal process went. But people are so hung up on picking camps these days that that's what happened. Now, things got really tough when the tragedy occurred on Maui, because people began to conflate our work with the emergency proclamation on housing and what we would do in Maui. We have zero inclination to do anything on Maui except what the people of Maui and Lahaina want. In fact, Nani even pulled some of those proposals back out of respect, to them. But there were already so many people that felt this sense that they were going to have something taken from them. No matter how many times I said I'm going to have the Attorney General stop someone else from buying the land, no matter how many times I said, if you want to pause as long as you want, pause. We'll build elsewhere to help people get housing. But people, by that time, they were really in a very heated state. I'm gonna keep it going, and whether we do 10 projects or 3 or 20, at least it'll be some housing for people, because it's really the biggest issue that most people face in Hawaii. And I will do all I can to make people trust that the process is going to build housing where they would hope it would go. I hope that people give us a chance. We hadn't approved but one project, which was our public housing works, which everybody knows, for the poorest of our individuals we needed, with Hakeem. Hakeem will take an enhanced role going forward. I have not named a housing czar yet. I may not name one. I might do this by committee so that people can work together rather than having someone at the tip of the spear trying to, challenge them. I just want to say that we put out an olive branch to people right now, right in this moment, to everybody, to people who didn't trust the process, to the conflicts that arose. If people seek peace, we will, I'm sure, find a way to accept it. But don't think the worst of an organization that believes in climate change, that believes we should be careful about our conservation lands. We're an administration that wants to fund all these things. We just have 50,000 too few homes. That's where I'm still coming from.
Okay. You will be extending the emergency proclamation. I think it's next week, right? Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just for clarity, emergency proclamations can only, in each increment, be 2 months. My feeling is we need a year to do some approvals of some decent projects, and then we can let that thing sunset. And what I would hope is whatever the best policies we come up with through the emergency proclamation then get ensconced in policy, just like whatever we do in this emergency period on fires and environment, that the legislature will then continue to fund into the future. It is tragic, and to Daryl's point, it is tragic to see little action on big issues until something goes wrong. But that's what we see on mental illness, on certain drugs. I mean, that's just been the way of policy making for too long.
1 second, hold on. Is this related to?
Oh, no.
Pause. Manolo, go for it.
Okay, I just wanted to ask your comments about DOH not renewing the AMR contract with Maui and Kauai.
Sure. Yes. So that was the procurement process. I read about the offer to the new company, just like everybody else. I was totally, because I intentionally stay out of procurement, just waiting to see. Some people are concerned that an outside company ended up winning the bid and they don't have the trust of the people of Kauai and Maui. We're going to pause that right now. First of all, it's under protest. Second of all, I believe that under the period of the emergency, while we're helping people recover from their loss of their clinics and their loss of their homes and loss of their medications, it's probably not the right time to make any change, especially in Maui. So I've asked the Attorney General to work with our Director of Health to pause there, and we'll work it out. It's tricky because, once again, people ask us to make sure we are as fiscally responsible as we can and cover as many needs as we can with the resources we've got. That's why there's procurement, and that's why cost factors into it. But as a healthcare person, it is true, we don't want to cut any corners, and that's been one of the concerns. So we're going to look at that, but there won't be any change for the foreseeable future.
I think there was, the reduction in qualification that was probably bothered a lot of people. And then should that even be part of it?
It really depends. In general, you want absolutely everything. Remember, in some of our rural communities, you'll never have a neurosurgeon because you don't have enough people, right? You're never going to have that third rig in Ka'u where I was working because as much as you might like it for that 1 or 2 times a year, you have to have that third rig somewhere in Waikiki where there's another 40,000 people. There's never enough resources for everything you want. Now, where health is concerned, there has to be kind of a minimum standard. And again, if that concern resonates with our director of health, then we'll make sure that they have that standard met, which is to have a full medic. Again, I wish we could have healthcare for everyone. I would love to have specialist care. In fact, tomorrow, I'll give you a little preview. Tomorrow, I will make the formal announcement of our program for loan forgiveness for all healthcare workers in the state. Tomorrow, I'll announce at the Workforce Shortage Summit that's held by Kelly Withey that will be offering $50,000 per healthcare provider per year, loan forgiveness, loan repayment specifically, if they come and work in Hawaii and commit. This is meant to provide healthcare in the communities so they don't have to be transferred. It's part of a broader program. The legislature devoted $10 million this year and $20 million next year. This should bring 500 plus healthcare providers into our state and solve some of these problems. But the problems are all pretty large, and now we have a new area of critical need, which is how we deal with fires and global warming. So we're going to be doing
I'm going to take the final question here because Gov actually has a meeting.
Perfect. So if everything's going to reopen on October 8th, is it a fair conclusion that 7 weeks later the Maui Invitational can be played?
Yes. In fact, I will be playing.
You don't get an invite, Gov. Sorry.
It is. It will be on. That's our hope, and we'd like to have it. It's been discussed. The people on Maui have asked that we have it there. We're, of course, going to consult with everybody to make sure that they feel comfortable having the actual games. I think it's a great way for us to, bring attention both to something spectacular, incredible athletes, and the struggles we've gone through. And I'd love to use that to raise a lot of resources for recovery, for the fund, for people to rebuild their homes and lives. So the NFL has been very generous. The PGA, which focuses their early tournaments in Kapalua, I'm sure will host their tournament still there, and to have the Invitational would be great.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin, for all the time. Appreciate it. Thanks, Makana.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Stand by, and if you could, Daryl, and.
Hey, a couple questions, quick question, just back.
Thank you, Governor.
You were watching a live news conference with Governor Josh Green regarding his latest updates out of Maui. Our reporter Daryl Huff was there asking questions along with other members of the media. As you heard off the top of our show at This Is Now, he provided a speech, an update for the people of the state of Hawaii. And the big update there is 66 people are still unaccounted for following the Maui wildfires. It has been a month since that inferno completely changed the landscape of Lahaina. He says the FBI has worked alongside Maui County in going through multiple lists of reported people who were missing, and they have now whittled it down to 66 people. The governor also talked on a number of different issues, including the resignation of his chief housing officer, Nani Medeiros. That news broke yesterday, and our Ben Gutierrez followed up with the story to dig a little bit deeper into the resignation. Here's that report.
A weak man. What happened? I came inside, what? He got to go check his bevities? What is going on? He's supposed to go,
Please not that. Let's not do that. This is not that kind of a meeting. It's not a political meeting or a campaign meeting.
You're not being a waiter. You talk to your boss like that. I'm your boss. And for real, these people, they are your boss.
Heated moments like this during a state housing meeting late last month highlight confrontations Nani Medeiros endured during her final days in office. Former gubernatorial candidate B.J. Penn and several testifiers hounded Medeiros, claiming she and Governor Josh Green were overlooking the concerns from Maui residents in the process of rebuilding Lahaina.
This meeting does not stand as valid, and you have no authority, Nani, to do what you guys are doing here. Take the meeting back to the county of Maui, please. That's not even a request. That's a demand from the people. Take this back to Maui County.
We'll meet with anybody who wants to meet with us. Part of the confusing part for me is there are 20, 30 different groups saying, we are Lahaina, we are Lahaina, we represent, and I don't know if that's true. I'm not from the community, but I will listen to you, just like I will listen to Uncle Archie tell me, so I can learn.
Medeiros was appointed 10 months ago, tasked to guide the administration in building affordable housing across the state.
She became the flashpoint for the governor's emergency proclamation on housing, and that process of approving housing.
Earth Justice and other groups criticized that emergency proclamation and even filed a lawsuit trying to block it.
The public let Nani Medeiros know loud and clear that that was just completely unacceptable, and that if we want to build our communities, rebuild our communities, it has to be done with community engagement.
In his statement announcing the resignation of Medeiros, Governor Green blamed a barrage of in-person and online personal attacks. He wrote, "The bullying tactics with obvious violent undertones employed by Mr. Penn and his followers have no place in Hawaii and are absolutely contrary to our spirit of aloha for others. I won't tolerate anyone from my team or anyone in our state being treated this way. It is despicable." In her own statement, Medeiros said although she understands frustration with the government, threats against her family forced her to step down for the safety of her loved ones.
And I'm very saddened that Nani Medeiros felt like she had to resign because of personal attacks, not because of a policy failure.
Once again, that was our Ben Gutierrez reporting on all the frustration surrounding the Housing Authority and their plans moving forward. We are going to keep an eye on all the updates out of Maui. Once again, the FBI is expected to release an updated list of missing persons. That usually happens around 6 o'clock Friday evening, so we can expect an update with that later this evening on your H&N digital platforms and online. Let's go ahead and take a live look outside. Here on Oahu, we are tracking a brush fire in the area of central Oahu. At last check, Kamehameha Highway has been shut down in both directions at Dole due to the brush fire. We're working to get more information there and figure out how large this fire is and how many HFD units are responding at this time. We'll be posting all the updates on our website and our H&N mobile news app. For now, I'm Dylan Ancheta in the H&N Digital Center. Thanks for watching this Hawaii News Now extended stream.